Thank you so much for joining our webinar this morning. We are super excited to be joined by a couple of really amazing guests for today's webinar, which we're calling Disaster Strikes, What Now? Navigating Emergency Resources and Preparedness. My name is Taylor Hiskey. I'll be your guide through today's webinar. I'll be what you would call maybe an MC, asking questions, taking questions from you all as participants. We are here with some really incredible guests. We have Nat Robinson, founder and CEO of Trustworthy here. We also have Jeremy Whalen, who is going to share his story in just a bit, but we are so excited and happy to have Jeremy with us. And we also have John Mills, who is CEO of Watch Duty, and our friends at Watch Duty. We're hopefully going to have a really powerful conversation all around disaster preparedness. We are in fire season, which seems to be all year long, which I think Jeremy can attest to. But we're truly in fire season now. We're in hurricane season. There's a lot of natural disasters that tend to happen during this time. So we felt it was good to pull together some individuals who could speak to how can we be prepared? What do we need to do? I'm going to say, here's a couple things that we're going to cover. We're going to talk to Jeremy. He's going to share with us his story and a little bit of the lessons that he's learned through the last little over almost a year. Wow, can't believe it's been almost a year. We're also going to talk about preparedness basics, real-time information, how to monitor and why that matters to us, how household organization can help you be better prepared, and then any actionables like a checklist or tools that you can use for preparing for disaster. So with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to Jeremy to start us off and share his story. He is an Altadena evacuee, so his home was unfortunately destroyed in the LA fires earlier this year, but he has an incredible story to share, and we felt like let's kick this meeting off with Jeremy. So Jeremy, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much. You know, one of the first things I did after the fire was to reach out to Trustworthy. I've been a member for a few years now, and as tragic as that night was, I think one of the things that I found very quickly afterwards was that having all of my stuff in one place was really a godsend at the very end. I could look and find detailed information on my insurance policies, on birth certificates, car titles. The night that the fire happened, it was, a lot of things happened very quickly. We were in a section of Altadena that really we weren't notified that it was going to come as far our direction until we had about 10-15 minutes to leave. So although we had filled up our car with one carload of stuff just in case, we didn't have a lot of time to really figure out what we were going to need, and all of my paper documents were lost. So in reaching out, because I noticed in the weeks and months afterwards, it was so nice having everything that I needed loaded online. And I think furthermore, the couple of things that really hit home were the couple of things that maybe I forgot to put on there. I realized how incredibly difficult it could be to replace some things. There was a car that was destroyed and we couldn't find a title because I didn't upload it. Going through that process with the insurance company to prove the car was ours, to go get another title. So it really meant a lot through that whole experience. I think one of the other things, and I'm really glad that Watch Duty's on the call too, because one of the other really, really cool things that evening was that because we weren't notified in time, it was really cool to see some of the neighbors looking at the fire, where it was and where it might be going through Watch Duty. And so it really gave us a sense that there's a fire that's 5 miles away. There's no way it would ever possibly make it to our neighborhood. And yet, as we were watching through the night, we realized this is getting close. There's some very powerful winds. gave us a sense that this is much more serious than we might have been initially been led to believe. But yes, with that being said, as crazy as that night was, yeah, Trustworthy really did make a difference.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for sharing that. Your story is incredible, and we do have a video that we made with Jeremy a couple months back, and I'll send that through after the webinar as well, because it is very powerful. But I guess one thing I have for you, Jeremy, is what surprised you the most in the aftermath? You mentioned, like, yes, there were things that you didn't have in Trustworthy that made it harder, but is there anything else that really surprised you about what happened after the fact?
Well, I think, one of the things I hear from a lot of fire disaster survivors are that there's a lot of resiliency with people. People are very kind. People really, people want to do something. We joked in the very beginning that, I probably had 100 pairs of socks, but maybe I didn't need 100 pairs of socks. But yet it was really cool that people were reaching out to do something wonderful and to see what we needed, and that was really powerful. I think the other thing too, all of us had this. All of us knew that the 5, 6, 10 things that we didn't grab, and we all realized that once we got to a shelter or something else, we all realized, oh shoot, I didn't get that. And maybe it was a memorabilia thing, maybe it was some important documentation. That really, as far as the surprises, I think that was it. The 5 or 10 things where you're just like, oh gosh, I don't have that.
I can only imagine. Yeah. There's so many stories that came from the fires earlier this year in LA, and one of the things was around the community, rallying together. And you even mentioned it in the video that Altadena is a really strong community, even still.
Yeah.
So super powerful.
Yeah.
One thing too is, you shared having things prepared, but is there any other advice that you would share with folks who maybe think this could never happen to me? This might never happen in our area. What would you say? Yeah,
and I think that's something that I as I talk with my neighbors, that we all say the same thing. We didn't think this would happen, and I think the one thing about emergencies that we've all talked about are that you don't really realize it's an emergency until it's over, and I think we all had that same type of thought process. I mean, going forward now, I do have a go bag of stuff. One of the things that I didn't have I didn't have any clothes, and it wasn't, you just don't think about that. You don't think, oh, well, let me pack a suitcase full of clothes. And so, at the very end, when you've been up for almost 24 hours, you realize, oh, okay, I need to take a shower. And you're like, oh, but I don't have any clothes to change into. Let me go find a place to buy some clothes. And so, things like a go bag, that's been really important. And that's something that I've set up. But just the idea that a plan of what you need to do if you need to leave your house in 5 minutes. What really would you grab, and just have it be just a part of your life. I mean, for me, it's much more part of my life to say, okay, if I need to leave in a few minutes, I grab this, and this, or you can have a written list, and it's just not making a very big deal about it. To leave, this is what we do.
Yeah, Nat.
Jeremy, I have a question for you. As you were considering like your physical safety and your family, and you were leaving the home, did it ever run through your mind like, hey, I don't really have to worry too much about paperwork because I know that that's already in Trustworthy? Was that a facet in you thinking of like, how do I get out of here quickly? Oh, I don't have to worry about that thing. I can just grab a handful of items and leave more quickly. Because always occurred to me like, oh, look, if you have it dialed in, that's one less thing to worry about, right?
And I think exactly, because one of the things that a lot of folks talk about are denial that this is actually what's happening. So as a fire is getting closer, you're thinking, okay, but it's probably not really going to burn my house. But then as you're leaving, you're like, oh, I have a couple minutes. What do I grab? One of the really if there was a silver lining the whole thing, I had stuff in Trustworthy, but I wanted to become a little more serious about it because of some other stuff that had happened in life, and I just needing some stuff for different family members, and so I'd hired a professional organizer to really go through and say, hey, let's separate these documents and let's start uploading them. So those that I hadn't finished uploading, I was able to grab that pile. So, there were things like receipts for things that were, really going to be important and we really needed, that were helpful for that. So I would also say, in addition to Trustworthy, I know you guys have a lot of organization services that really help get people on board with that. And I would really recommend doing that because I'm not a professional organizer. I'm really good at what I do at work in my career, but as far as being a professional organizer, that's not me, and finding out what I need. So that was really helpful. Now, to your point, to say, I can grab this and this. I know this is there. I know I'm missing something, but I know there's really big things that I have with me right now.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's super powerful too. I think it's such a great reminder to know, yes, that not everyone is a personal organizer.
Yeah.
I know I'm not myself either, but there is assistance out there as well. And I think to your point too, there's like this awareness, right? Awareness of what you have and what you don't have, what you need and what you don't need in those situations help, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So perhaps that's the thing about getting started. So I guess too, like if you had maybe a piece of advice of like, get started with this just based on your own personal experience, what would that get started with this be?
For me, it was making an appointment with that professional organizer because I knew that once that was on the books, I was going to move forward. It's very easy to sign up for an account, or it's very easy to, create a list of things I want to do. But for me, it was very important to call the organizer and set up an appointment and say, okay, I don't have everything ready right now, but let's get something on the books so I can start doing this. Because that to me was invaluable.
That's great. Thank you. Well, last question. I don't want to take up too much of your time this morning, but would love to just understand, how's it going? Where are you at in your process now?
So good. Actually, it was interesting. I was walking around the neighborhood yesterday because a lot of folks are starting to rebuild. We are almost done with our permits. We have one final little engineering study we have to do, but we're getting really close. So that's exciting. But it was fun walking around and talking with folks yesterday that were rebuilding the neighborhood. It's changed a lot. After the Army Corps came and took away the debris, it was almost a breath of fresh air. And now that we're seeing a lot of structures starting to go up, it's another breath of fresh air. It's very, very nice to see folks starting to return or getting a plan to return. So I'm very busy actually with all of that, but it's nice to do something other than construction for a day. So I'm very glad to be on the call.
The full-time job you've got right now, rebuilding
Absolutely.
Your home.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again so much for sharing your story, Jeremy, and good luck. Honestly, I know all of us at Trustworthy are huge Jeremy fans, so we can't wait to see your home rebuilt.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So this next part is really going to hopefully facilitate a conversation. So John, Jeremy, and Nat, we've prepared a couple of questions to really help build how do we become more prepared. And so the first question that I have is really around, where do most families go wrong when it comes to being prepared? Now, this might feel like a negative, but I do think it is helpful in so far as, where do we get started? So I guess that's a good other translation of it. So Nat, I'm actually going to look to you to kick us off with this question.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. This is a great poster in the elevator in our building that says, "Be your own hero." And I really like this concept. It's something that so John was posting around this morning, the LA Fire Department considering training for residents to stay and fight for their homes. And we saw really great examples of success there. Now, I'm not saying that's the the best solution for everyone. You have to obviously be safe, and physical safety is paramount. But I love this concept of be your own hero and sort of take charge. Don't expect that someone else is going to come rescue you before, during, or after an event. And so what can you do to take responsibility? I think in line with that, our approach is like, don't wait for preparedness for a big event. Like, it doesn't have to be a fire, a flood, or an illness, or some other life event that happens. What our members find actually more commonly is that these everyday gaps, these scattered logins, sort of misplaced documents, forgotten policies, and these actually create some of the biggest vulnerabilities. So treating it less about like preparing for a big event and sort of taking this iterative, tiny steps approach in getting your documentation set up and backed up, getting your go bag ready. An ounce of preparedness, right, is I think the expression. So each ounce that you can add on an incremental basis is really going to make a big difference. It doesn't have to be all at once, and certainly not in the moment that it's happening. It's the last time, it's the last moment you want to be trying to get prepared for it. So thinking about what an organized system means for your family, for the place that you live, for the things that you might have to deal with, and looking at ways to get that started and make those small increments.
I really love that. I was hearing Erin Brockovich speak after the fires, and she was talking about, I forget the title of her book, but it was Superman's Not Coming for You. And it's, and yet I find people with the tools are really, really resilient. People who know what to do. We're home best advocate for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jeremy. I mean, that's what I think about here where I live off the grid in Sonoma County is I have to be my own advocate. I've done wildland fire training. I clear my brush. I take care of my house. I have metal roofs. I've done a lot of my own work because I understand what happens when the fire service is overwhelmed. And a lot of my teammates and users are firefighters, and it's very hard for them to hear this many structures on fire at once because everyone expects 911 to show up, and they do when there's one structure on fire, and they're very quick. But when you're fighting 5,000 structure fires at once, you're on your own.
Yeah, exactly. They can't do it. There was a lot of very good firefighters that weren't able to save everything. There just weren't enough.
It breaks their heart. I've talked to many of them, and many of them are in tears when they realize they can't do anything about it. It's hard for them, and they live there too. It's their community as well.
Yeah, I think again it comes back to just having an understanding of what you need, right, and what your family needs, what your home needs, and so that way you can move forward from there, right? It's not a one size fits all either. Jeremy, I'm sure like your neighbors and you had very different, what you need to grab, what you need to prepare, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting, John, hearing you, because one of the conversations we're having with a lot of neighbors now is as you're planning, make sure you have that metal roof. There's some actually really cool metal roofs that you can have, or make sure you don't have eaves, or, talk with an architect who specializes in this. There's a lot of push to do that. And we're really trying to make people aware of every way they can be prepared.
So back to this question here on the screen, I think, besides the obvious, have a go bag, have watch duty, have trustworthy, I think there's a lot of other things that people don't really think about. And one of the big ones is, what's my plan C, D, E, and F, right? Yep. Plan A is move slowly and swiftly. Plan B is move fast. Well, what happens if I get separated from my family? Where is our meeting point? Where do we all go? What if the cell towers have burned and the infrastructure is down, right? So people need to plan farther in advance for bad issues that may arise in certain fires. I think there's a lot to be learned about this through other organizations. You look at Pepperdine University, for example, they have a shelter in place policy, which is a very scary thing for a lot of people to do, but they are deep in a canyon there, and several times they have had to use it. And rather than clog the roads, they get inside, and you can see videos of what is happening outside. It's kind of wild, but no one has ever died there. And I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but really planning ahead. What happens if I'm overwhelmed? Where do I go? What do I do? Where is my safe zone? Right? You hear countless stories of people surviving in parking lots at a shopping center, right? Because there's nothing to burn there. And so you really have to think farther ahead than just plan A and plan B.
One other quick thing you mentioned, one of the things I didn't expect was the cell towers were going to go down. And I know that seemed, because you're in a city, you don't think about life without a cell phone because they're just so ubiquitous and good right now. And yet we really didn't have, you could barely get something out, but the cell tower next to us went down. The electricity was out. All your services that you normally would have were out. So yeah, to that point, what is the plan B, C, and D? What do you do?
That's do you guys have you heard of any families or any preparedness situations where there is, okay, what if your cell phone goes down? What do we have? Like for me and my family, we have a go bag with walkie-talkies, right? Like that's only going to help you if you're right next to somebody, but it will allow for us if someone's going to one shelter and someone's going to another, we can still at least talk to each other. But do you have any other examples of that, or that what you've heard by chance?
We like to go camping outdoors and do all that. So we're getting our ham radio license now, and that kind of works for us. But I think even the normal family radio, the FRS walkies, that would be very helpful too as well. Just in case you have it in your go bag. They're not that expensive. It's just one additional thing.
Well, I think this actually gives us a really great segue into our next question, which is around misconceptions around emergencies, right? And I think you bring up a good one, John and Jeremy, in that, cell towers go down. What do we do? But are there any other misconceptions that you wish people would just ignore when it comes to an emergency? And John, I'll look to you first to answer this one.
I think that kind of, playing on my last note is that there's a lot of misunderstanding around the time and expense about some of this stuff. So obviously, let's assume that you're doing all the right things. You have a go bag, you have a safe zone, you plan all that stuff. But if we're talking about wildfire, a lot of home hardening, for example, is not very expensive, right? So if you look at it as a whole, you say, oh my goodness, I can't put a metal roof on, that's $40,000, but no one's telling you need to go do that. I prefer to start from the cheap and then get to the expensive, right? So you can start clearing the mulch around your house and replace it with rock, and you can do all sorts of things to keep all these bushes away from your home. You and your family can do this over a weekend and do some light gardening to help remove some of the fuels from your building. If you have open eaves with vents, you can go to the hardware store and get fine mesh and staple mesh over it. It's not as hard as people think. And I think that I wish it was talked about more approachably, rather than this is a big thing, your house is going to burn, rather than, hey, if you start here and end here, you're going to be a lot better off. Because if you start at the expensive part, you're not going to get to the little stuff. And so I think it's important to peel the onion back and take your time to slowly do things that can make a difference in your house's survivability.
John, I feel like you should be on an episode of HGTV, rebuilding a home after a fire kind of thing, or taking steps to prep your home for disaster.
I'd love to. I watch I'm a home builder, and so for fun, I work on my house and I build those sorts of things. But yeah, a lot of there's a lot of good information out there on the internet, but again, I feel like it's very overwhelming. I don't feel like it's very approachable. And so I wish that people would be able to think more calmly about this and not see a big price tag.
That is such a great reminder, John. Thank you. Really, I think for those of us who live in fire prone areas, it is a little overwhelming to think, about, oh, what will happen on the day? And so thinking a little bit further ahead and taking it chunk by chunk, baby step by baby step, such a great reminder. So thank you. Really appreciate that.
One other thing that I had written down about this in particular is check your insurance policy and know your insurance policy. I feel like we were really, it was something I checked every December. So we had just up some of the coverages. There's a lot of heartbreaking stories of people that really felt like they were completely covered because they had insurance and they have maybe half the money they need to build their house. And so, finding out through, getting a second opinion, your insurance company will tell you how much they think it costs to rebuild, but get a second opinion from somebody. Make sure that you know the coverages that are actually in your policy. And if it's your agent explaining them, or getting second opinions or talking to builders, it's a helpful thing to do.
Yeah, and if you don't, if you're not good at reading those kinds of documents, you can certainly import them into Trustworthy, and we give you a nice summary of those documents so you can get an understanding of what your coverage actually looks like.
That's a very good.
Yeah, so that's a good way if you're having trouble understanding the terminology, the terms of your agreement, or you want better information. Not only are you going to have the policy available and Trustworthy, secure, and safe, and available when you need it, but we have some intelligent features that help you understand those documents as well.
Yes.
That's a great reminder. Thank you. And so ultimately, I think we just sort of touched on this with John's answer, but the balance of readiness with everyday life. I think it feels overwhelming, right? I think there is an overwhelm, which is why we're doing this webinar, right? How can we feel less overwhelmed when preparing for what happens next? And now I think here at Trustworthy, every day we're not trying to invoke fear, right? We want to help feel preparedness without invoking fear. And where do you feel like that needs to come into play?
Yeah, I think preparedness should feel like peace of mind, not like a second job, or shouldn't feel like anxiety, right? I think that's where we try to automate as much of the process of getting organized, getting your paper, your important documents and information organized in a state where it's available to you all the time, and that you feel, like not just in emergencies, that you can go to on a day-to-day basis to look up a bit of information, like what's the VIN number to the car, what are my kids' social security numbers, does the dog have their vaccinations up to date, whatever it is, that it's equally useful on a day-to-day basis, but that you don't have to do it all at once. We certainly have people who will sit down and try and dial it in for a weekend and get it all done, or work with a professional organizer. I think that's a great sort of coaching mechanism to help you get it done or do it for you. A lot of our members are certainly time-starved and busy people. So there's lots of ways to get it done. We have a lot of facility, we have a lot of automation to make it feel not like a heavy lift, and that you can sort of build a habit around, something comes in the mail, use the mobile app to scan something in and just, great, it's done. Get a receipt, scan it in, it's done. All of those kinds of things that you take for granted on a day-to-day basis, but when when life moments strike, you're so happy that you have those things available to you. Just sort of building this low-key habit around taking steps towards preparedness and organization, so it doesn't feel like, I gotta find time to do this and make it a big ordeal. We call it the cleaning the garage problem, right? Everyone knows the garage needs cleaning. There's stuff you want to throw out, but that's not how you want to spend your weekend. So we really like this sort of incremental approach or baby steps approach.
That's my advice as well.
Yeah.
I try and chip away at the problem, right? Rather than looking at like, oh my God, if I don't clean the whole garage this weekend, that's never going to get cleaned. It's like, I need to just start chipping away at it, right? Slowly, and make it more digestible. Which is back to my earlier point of it seems daunting, and you can't eat an elephant in one bite, right? It's a bite at a time. And so I think the patience and diligence around this and realize that you are making iterative progress is rewarding when you're building anything or fixing something, or in this case, hardening your home and preparing for disaster. It should not feel like a hard task. I know that's saying a lot, and it's hard to do. And frankly, I live in a forest of hundreds of acres, and I have to maintain a lot of land here and my house and everything in it. And it takes time to do it. And I chip away at it year after year, day after day. And it's not a big part of my life because I'm not trying to accomplish it in one task, one bite at a time.
You know, John, I'm curious to, I mean, I have Watch Duty on my phone ready to go, and I can look at, I probably look at it a little too often to prepare myself mentally. Living here in Oregon, which there's a few fires happening right now. What are ways in which Watch Duty is sort of evolving? Like, you maybe not able to share too much, but like, is there an evolution to help with balancing this readiness aspect with Watch Duty?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of plans in the future from what it looks like to actually build some of these plans in a more iterative approach. And so, you know, we found there's a lot of great websites out there like readyforwildfire.org and bunches of others, but they don't really chip away at the problem, right? What I'm looking for is something more like Instructables. If you guys have ever seen the website, it's like how to change your oil, and it like walks you through these step-by-step processes with photos and videos and helps you build confidence. And so that's something that we're actively thinking about building and taking all the great work of all these other agencies and really making it actually digestible. A lot of them feel like it was built by the government, and it is. But if you look at something like Trustworthy as an example, it is built for a consumer, right? So it is friendly, it is easy to use. And we need a lot more of this in government and in preparedness in general. And so it's something that's definitely on our roadmap for the future.
Definitely. Jeremy, I kind of have a question for you around this topic as well, because I feel like there's probably a before fire and after fire, right?
Yes.
If there was something that you wish that you could have done before this had happened, obviously you were so prepared, you used Trustworthy, you had all these really wonderful things, but if there's anything.
There's 100 things, and I think that's part of it. I think what I would have done was, I would have had a bigger insurance policy. I would have put more information in Trustworthy. But I think I think the big thing, going back to the point about you don't know it's an emergency until it's over. I've heard that from a lot of folks. I think just understanding that, now it's time to leave, or now it's time to having that whole readiness, the plan B, C, and D ready. There were a lot of things that we thought might work in the beginning, but the first place that we went to evacuate was then evacuated because it was too close to the fire. So that, we had with the neighbors, you think about yourself and your family, but I think one of the things we noticed at the end was, there was how about the gentleman that lives at the end of the street who's in his 80s? He left his phone in his house. So, oh wait, do we know any relatives for, how do we track him down to make sure he was okay? And, things like that working through. But I think the big thing is just a good plan B and C. What do you do if the first one doesn't work? Because we had the first plan and that didn't work, so we had to go from there.
It's so interesting what you say, Jeremy. It almost feels like you need a tabletop exercise or a dry run to have the muscle memory of like, oh, what is the plan? What are we doing? Yeah. Going through it theoretically doesn't quite build that, but it's certainly helpful, right? To what are those different plans? Yeah. Who are we going to take care of beyond our own household? And just sort of having the discussion about it, I guess, like anything that you could do, right, to prepare mentally, because in that moment, most people aren't sharper, right? They tend to be more confused and more emotional, and being able to snap back to that, let's call it training that you did, some kind of training that you did would be super helpful.
You know, I'm reminded of when I worked in this larger skyscraper, and I was about halfway up, and we would have our fire drills, and it was, we'd pull out full of things that we'd have the fire captains, I guess, on the floor, and we would put Post-it notes on all of the offices once someone was left. So there were things that we would do there, but it was very, we went through the drill, we knew what to do, and I think that was.
My community has a safety preparedness group that I'm part of, and I have a 92-year-old neighbor, so she's sort of like my buddy in that, and so like making sure that she is safe and out of her home, and so a dry run with even your street, right? Knowing the people on your street and being able to grab them and go. Right. It's such a huge piece of this preparedness aspect. Didn't even really think about that as part of this, but it's true.
Yeah. Because you're going to wonder where your neighbors are, and that's
No, and no one wants that.
No.
Well, I actually think this again beautifully transitions into our last question for this group. But if we had a piece of advice, if attendees could do one thing, even in the next 24 hours, to help them be more prepared, what should it be?
Yeah, I think to play on the last conversation, which is what I was going to mention here, besides download Watch Duty and get Trustworthy, you should start the preparing of the tabletop exercise, right? So you can sit at the dinner table with your family and talk about the things that are important to you. Where are all my documents? They should all be in one filing cabinet. I can pick the freaking thing up and take it with me. What's my kid's favorite stuffy? There's all these things that you need to start writing down. And that doesn't take very long to start thinking about what's actually important to you, because I've heard many stories like Jeremy's and others where once they realize an emergency, they're looking around their house and they're realizing, oh my God, what about my family photos of my father from the war and all of these things? You don't want to be thinking about that in the moment. Cognitive decline happens when you start to pump adrenaline. And so you really have to plan this in advance. And so if you sit down with your family and really start that list, then you can do the next step, again, iteratively on another day. Then you can start planning on, okay, where are we going to go? Where's our safe zone? Do we have one on our property? What if we get split up? Where are we going to meet? Where's the parking lot that we can go into if there's a plan F? How do you do that? And it's mostly just a mental exercise. You don't have to go get everything, but if you don't start writing and planning, then you can't execute.
And that's such a great piece of advice. And actually, as part of this, towards the end here, we will share Trustworthy pull together a disaster preparedness guide, which will hopefully help you pull together your checklist, right? How are you preparing? And so we don't want you to leave without tools. And so we'll have that for you here at the end of the session. So it's a great reminder. Thanks, John. Any other one things?
I think that, in addition to the plan C and D, I think the one thing that was helpful for me was doing that step of making an appointment with somebody so I know that it was going to be kept. To me, that was important. So for me, it was an organizer. I know there's definitely some professionals you guys also work with as well. And I think having an appointment on the books made me stick with it and do it.
Right. That's great. That's a great note. Yeah, I think what I was going to say mirrors that is like, just take a single step. Just do one thing today. Whether it's booking that appointment with, an organizer or trustworthy certified expert. We have a national network of those folks you can work with to get everything dialed in. If you want to digitize documents, if you want to get your Trustworthy account set up, that's a great first step. Or it could be, just download the Trustworthy mobile app and scan a doc today. It's really simple. It takes about 5 minutes. Probably something like an insurance policy or a healthcare directive or power of attorney or whatever it is. Just pick one doc and get started. And you can do another one tomorrow. It doesn't have to all get done today. You might find you can get a lot done pretty quickly, but just take a single step. And whether that's document preparedness or figuring out your physical security plan and exit plan, or going in, clearing some shrubbery from around your house. Just do one thing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, to mirror what you said too, Nat, that I found that setting aside 10 minutes is really all it took for me to get 3 really important things uploaded into Trustworthy. It was our insurance policy, the latest tax return, which is important to me, and then my son's birth certificate.
Yeah.
And so having those 3 things up in Trustworthy took me less than 10 minutes, and it felt good. And then I could feel myself keep wanting to keep going. So it's a really good reminder. Thanks, Nat. So thank you so much for everyone, all of you, for really contributing to a really amazing conversation. And I'm sure there's more questions coming from our audiences as well. So just a reminder, if you have questions, type them in the chat. You can find the Q&A function. We'll be answering those in just a moment. But before we do that, I wanted to give an opportunity to John and Nat to talk a little bit more about Watch Duty and Trustworthy. So John, I'm going to kick it over to you to introduce Watch Duty to us.
Thanks, Taylor. Hopefully, if you live in a fire-prone area, you've come across Watch Duty. We're a nonprofit organization that works around the clock to gather and disseminate all the information that we can find on active wildfires. So you can see a list here on the screen of all these different functions and features, but I've been through this a couple times as well. I've almost lost my ranch twice, which is why I started this. And I used to have 15 different browser tabs open. I was trying to track the planes, looking at the wildfire cameras, figuring out where the wind was going. And it seemed silly to me that this hadn't happened yet. And so we have all the information that the government puts out as well, from all the local sheriffs and counties. And where the real magic happens is we have about 300 people 24/7 listening to the first responder radio traffic. And that's how we're able to send out updates and information that is coming out from the fire ground, rather than waiting for someone in an office to collate some information to push out through an official channel, which can take 45 minutes or an hour, as unfortunately the residents of Palisades and Altadena found out. When fires are moving that fast, you need information now. And so Watch Duty is free to download. It is a nonprofit. If you want to support us, you can donate in the app, but all life and safety services are free and will always remain free.
Great, John. The QR code here sends you to the Watch Duty website, and you can also download the mobile app there on the homepage as well. So really incredible app to have on your phone. Next up, just going to turn it over to Nat to talk a little bit about Trustworthy.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. The reason we built Trustworthy is that in talking to friends and family, which is something that almost everyone does, and thinking about estate and legacy, we found that lots of people were doing kind of the same thing. They were building a DIY version of what we now call the family operating system, whether that was a folder or a filing cabinet or a fire safe or all the digital tools that people had used, including the photo app on your phone, to try and keep track of now what's become sort of an overwhelming amount of information that families are kind of trying to keep track of across property, insurances, passwords, crypto accounts, investment accounts, all the financial aspects of your life, all the maybe related business information that you may have as a family business or a business owner, and on across multiple categories you can see here on the page that we cater to. Really a safe place to keep all that important information for all the moments that you might need it, day-to-day moments and big life moments. That we built a really purpose-built system because we found that all those DIY systems all kind of fell short in some ways, and that the world is becoming increasingly digital. So all the paper-based systems, digital first or digital only, something that sort of accelerated through the pandemic. And it's no longer sufficient to keep things like, I think that's an email somewhere, or I think that might be in that account behind that login. People were worried that they were going to lose track of something, the myriad number of things that they had to deal with across the household. And they were certainly worried that if they were the person responsible for that thing, that the rest of the family didn't know where to go to find it. So we've really built this end-to-end system for your whole ecosystem, for you, your loved ones, and any trusted professionals you might have who you want to collaborate with, like an estate planning attorney, an accountant, a wealth advisor, a professional organizer, or some other kind of fiduciary responsibility to help you keep track of all that important information. Avoid all the costs of if you're not on top of things and you miss a payment, or you lose coverage, maybe worst case scenario, because you missed a payment on your insurance. And that you're on top of things across your life. We have a set of reminders and a whole bunch of facility to help you stay on top of things, as well as keep everything safe and secure and shared with the people who need it in the moments they need it.
As I mentioned earlier, we do have a disaster planning guide. We pulled this together so that you can feel prepared and have something tangible. The great news about this as well is if after you've done this disaster planning guide and you've gone through it and you've filled through some of the questions here, you can save it to your Trustworthy account. You can scan it and save it there for your family members to access, which is great. But if you are looking for more resources, this is a great one for you. That QR code will send you directly to our disaster planning guide. And additionally, we also have a really amazing discount today for those of you who are here on the webinar, who maybe you have a free Trustworthy account or you haven't started a Trustworthy account. We will have 20% off a silver or gold plan for the first year for attending today. And so we really appreciate your time and for being here with us and sharing your morning with us. And for that, we will reward you with 20% off. So appreciate you all. Again, I will send this out, so don't fear, you will have access to this after the fact. And the last thing to end us on a really wonderful, positive, fun note. Trustworthy just kicked off yesterday our Escaped to New Zealand sweepstakes. And that is through the month of September into the first part of October for utilizing Trustworthy, sharing it, and inviting your friends, family, advisors to Trustworthy. We're giving away a trip to New Zealand, really escaping maybe the reality that we live in here today. And what better way to do that with than to New
Jeremy
Zealand.
might be ready for an escape to New Zealand.
Back to New Zealand, that's a great place.
The fun part is, like, if you win this, Jeremy gets to go with you. So
right. I'll go.
I just saw someone say, if going back to this, yes, please scan this. This is a great discount for you.
I will answer the question. We also have a great discount for military, or really all first responders. I think that's apropos of what we're talking about here. It's a 50% discount off any of our plans, our subscription plans. It's for firefighters, of course, for police, paramedics, doctors, teachers, military, Coast Guard, really anyone of our community heroes who clearly are in the line of fire on a daily basis, and we want to be able to help their families and them have peace of mind and know that their important documents are safe and secure and private to their ecosystem and trustworthy.
Yes. That's a great, thank you. Actually, we have another question from Shashi. Does it have to be an attachment to an email to get data into Trustworthy?
No, but that's a great way. If you have something in Trustworthy, as an email, that every Trustworthy account has its own email ID that you can either copy on things or forward an email to. We can share out an easy way to find out how to do that. But if you forward that email with an attachment to Trustworthy, we will extract it and automate the organization of that document into your system for you. But there are lots of other ways to get information to Trustworthy. We have a mobile scanner on the mobile apps on both iOS and Android. If you have a ScanSnap scanner, we have an integration with them, so it can go straight into Trustworthy. You can drag and drop documents. You can use our Chrome plugin to grab screenshots of your browser There's a myriad number of ways to get information into Trustworthy, really whichever way you prefer.
Thanks, Nat. If there are any other questions, oh, thanks, Sue. Really appreciate that feedback. Appreciate you being here. Thank you again, everybody. It's been such a wonderful time to have this conversation with everyone, and we will send this recording out here in a little bit, but appreciate you spending your time in your morning with us, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, John, Nat, and Jeremy.